The story of the Titanic is often reduced to the cliched narrative of its catastrophic collision with an iceberg, the vessel's tragic descent, and the heartbreaking loss of lives. Yet, the full account of this monumental maritime calamity extends far beyond what is commonly known. Joe Rogan, the famous American podcaster and UFC commentator, has also revealed some bone-chilling revelations about the ill-fated ship. In today's video, we will expose the overlooked details and unveil 21 spine-tingling facts about the Titanic that no one knew. The shocking truth about the Titanic's victims. Joe Rogan, the master of mysterious theories, never fails to captivate his audience with his intriguing discussions. During one of his shows, he delved into a conspiracy surrounding the infamous sinking of the Titanic, the largest cruise ship in the 1910s. The conversation kicked off with Rogan and his guest, Dave Portnoy, bantering about the renowned French astrologer Nostradamus. While Nostradamus is famous for supposedly predicting future events and world wars, Portnoy wasn't buying into the hype. Instead, he introduced Rogan to a book that eerily foreshadowed the Titanic's tragic fate. Titled Futility, and later revised to The Wreck of Titan, this book predicted the ship colliding with an iceberg 14 years before it set sail. Rogan, always the voice of reason, pondered the likelihood of icebergs being a common hazard back in the day. "But I bet they hit icebergs all the time back then," he quipped. Despite his fascination with the book, Rogan managed to dismiss the theory of premonition with a rational approach. However, controversies surrounding the Titanic disaster persist, leaving many unanswered questions. We all know that the Titanic disaster claimed over 1,500 lives, but we still can't pin down the exact number of casualties. The official count stands at 1,514, but it's not that simple. Some sources suggest it could be as low as 1,419 or as high as 1,635. Talk about a mystery that just won't quit. Now, let's delve into the bone-chilling details of the recovery mission. Imagine the daunting task of retrieving bodies from the icy depths of the ocean. The brave souls who undertook this grim duty had to haul up a staggering 316 to 337 bodies. And only 23% of the deceased were brought back to the surface. The rest? Well, they're still resting at the bottom of the sea. But what's more unbelievable is that fact that to this day, there are unidentified bodies from the Titanic tragedy. How does one go about identifying individuals who may have been traveling incognito or whose names were lost in the chaos of the disaster? It's a conundrum that has baffled experts for decades. But in 2008 something happened. A jaw-dropping 96 years after the catastrophe, the body of a 19-month-old baby, Sydney Leslie Goodwin, was finally identified. It's a tale that continues to baffle and intrigue us to this day. Who knows what other secrets lie hidden beneath those icy waters? Stay tuned for more unbelievable discoveries. A gentleman's farewell. First-class passenger Benjamin Guggenheim didn't let the sinking of the ship cramp his style. When he realized the severity of the situation, he decided to go down in true gentlemanly fashion. Donning his finest attire and accompanied by his valet, he made a grand descent down the ship's staircase, settled in with a cigar, and declared, "We've dressed up in our best and are prepared to go down like gentlemen." Now that's what we call making an exit. And then there's Charles Juffin, the ship's baker, who had a rather bizarre survival story. When he realized the ship was doomed, instead of panicking like everyone else, he decided to get drunk. Most people probably thought he perished in the icy waters, but he was found treading water after about 2 hours, showing minimal health problems. It seems that alcohol might have helped him survive the cold waters. Who would have thought that getting drunk could actually be a survival strategy? The Titanic certainly had its share of unique characters making their exits in unexpected ways. But while these stories may seem outlandish to some, there are those who just can't wrap their heads around such unconventional behavior. Take Joe Rogan, for instance. He's not buying into the idea that indulging in a few drinks could be considered legitimate survival strategies. There are still human remains in the debris. The Titanic, a name that still sends shivers down our spines, continues to reveal its secrets even a century after its tragic sinking. In a jaw-dropping revelation, it has come to light that human remains may still linger within the haunting wreckage. How do we know this? A seemingly innocuous photo surfaces in 2004, capturing more than just your typical debris and sand. And what caught the eye of the world was the unmistakable sight of a boot and a leather coat, hinting at a bone-chilling truth: human remains trapped within the heart of the ill-fated vessel. But on the other hand, renowned filmmaker James Cameron, a veteran of 33 expeditions to the Titanic wreck, has boldly claimed to have never laid eyes on human remains during his ventures. But before we leap to any conclusions, let's consider the magnitude of this catastrophic event. With approximately 1,500 souls lost to the icy depths, is it not audacious to assume that none remain within the unexplored chambers of the Titanic? Federal officials have long grappled with the ship's fate, emphasizing the crucial need to protect it from scavengers and looters. Their concern is not unfounded, as it is entirely plausible that numerous undiscovered remains may still inhabit its eerie corridors. The debate over preservation has raged on since the Titanic's discovery in 1985, when it was found resting 2 miles beneath the frigid waters of the North Atlantic. But the burning question persists: where do the missing souls of those lost in the Titanic's tragic demise lie? The richest man who became the hero of the day. Among the first-class passengers, there was a man whose wealth was so immense, it made headlines even in the midst of the disaster. John Jacob Astor IV, the richest man on board with a net worth of $87 million, equivalent to a staggering $2 billion today, became an unexpected hero in the face of the sinking ship. Accompanied by his young wife Madeleine, Astor's presence was already causing a stir due to their scandalous age gap. But when disaster struck, it was not his wealth or personal life that defined him, but his actions in the face of impending doom. As the lifeboats were being filled, Astor made the ultimate sacrifice. Despite his wealth and status, he prioritized the safety of women and children, ensuring that his pregnant wife Madeleine boarded a lifeboat before him. However, when he was about to join her, he saw 2 terrified children in need of saving. Without a second thought, he stepped aside and gave up his place in the boat, a true act of heroism. Eyewitness accounts reveal a man who faced his demise with dignity and grace. Even in his final moments, he was seen standing alone on the deck and sharing a cigarette with a fellow passenger, Jacques Futrelle. His selflessness and bravery in the face of tragedy left a lasting impression on those who witnessed it. Astor's sacrifice did not go unnoticed. When his body was recovered, it revealed not only the wealth he possessed, but also the depth of his character. His pockets held a treasure trove of valuables, including a diamond ring and $2,440 in American notes. Among these items was a gold pocket watch, a poignant memento that his son Vincent cherished for the rest of his life. In the end, John Jacob Astor IV's legacy was not defined by his riches, but by his selfless act of courage and compassion. The unbelievable origin of the iceberg. Prepare to be shocked, because the truth about the iceberg that brought down the Titanic is more jaw-dropping than anyone could have imagined. It turns out that this infamous chunk of ice was no ordinary berg. It was the result of some seriously dramatic weather that took place for years before the ill-fated voyage. A team of scientists at the University of Sheffield uncovered the startling origins. The Titanic's nemesis revealed a surprising truth about its origin. A period of warm, wet weather had weakened glacier, making them more susceptible to calving. And calve they did, producing a colossal iceberg measuring a whopping 400 feet in length and weighing an astonishing 2 megatons. This mammoth iceberg had been brewing for years, and when it finally collided with the Titanic, the ship didn't stand a chance. The impact crumpled over 100 meters of the hull like it was nothing more than flimsy paper, sealing the fate of the unsinkable vessel. In the aftermath of this tragic disaster, many were left scratching their heads in disbelief. How could one iceberg take down a ship of such grandeur? Some speculated that the Titanic's builders had skimped on quality materials, but this theory was swiftly debunked when pieces of the ship were recovered and examined. Further investigation revealed a shocking truth: the rivets used in the construction contained 3 times more slag than modern standards allow. For those not familiar with metallurgy, slag is the residue left behind after the smelting process. This excess slag made the rivets brittle in cold temperatures, and when the iceberg scraped alongside the ship, it sheared off the rivet heads, causing the hull plates to separate and allowing water to rush in. So, it wasn't just a case of cutting corners to save money, it was a result of being pressured to complete the Titanic and its sister ships on an aggressive schedule. The Titanic's ban became part of a legendary tale of dedication and courage. Imagine this: the grand ship meets its icy fate, panic and fear grip the passengers, and yet, amidst the turmoil, the ship's band decides to play on. All 8 members of the orchestra valiantly continued to serenade the doomed vessel as it descended into the depths of the ocean. For over 2 hours after the collision, these gallant musicians strummed and tooted away, trying to soothe the frayed nerves of those on board. Their selfless act of playing on in the face of impending doom is legendary. But the tale doesn't end there. One member of the band, Roger Bracou, the Titanic's cello player, remained a mystery for decades. Despite perishing in the sinking, he wasn't officially declared dead until 2000. The French army even labeled him a deserter when he failed to show up for World War I. It took a whopping 88 years for the French Association of the Titanic to clear his name and lay his legacy to rest. Director James Cameron immortalized this poignant story in his 1997 film Titanic, ensuring that the world would never forget the unwavering spirit of these musical maestros. So, next time you hear about the Titanic, remember the brave souls who chose to play on in the face of tragedy. Their music may have been silenced by the depths of the ocean, but their courageous melody will forever echo in the annals of history. The imposter funnel added a touch of audacity to the Titanic's grandeur. The iconic ship, known for its smokestacks, turns out to have had a sneaky little imposter in the mix. While the Titanic's profile boasted 4 majestic smokestacks, only 3 of them were actually functional. The 4th one? Purely for show. It served no purpose other than to make the ship look more impressive. Now, we all remember James Cameron's epic film Titanic, right? Well, turns out even he fell for the facade. In the movie, all 4 smokestacks were depicted billowing smoke, but that was just a Hollywood oversight. So, why would the clever minds behind the Titanic pull off such a stunt? Back in the early 1900s, those smokestacks were more than just a means to release furnace smoke, they were a symbol of speed and safety. And the White Star Line, in all its wisdom, wanted the Titanic to exude power and grandeur from every angle. So, they slyly added a 4th funnel, a mere imposter in the world of real smoke-spewing chimneys. It's a tale of audacity and cunning, a move that left the world in awe of the sheer cheekiness of it all. The Titanic, with its imposter funnel standing tall, fooled not just its passengers, but the entire world. One thing might have saved them sheds light on a potential savior that was overlooked. Although the Carpathia came in to rescue the Titanic, there was actually a closer ship that could have been the hero of the day. The Californian. Captained by Stanley Lord, the Californian was chilling in an ice field, trying to do the responsible thing and warn other ships. But the Titanic apparently brushed them off. Now, here's what happened. The officers on the Californian actually spotted the Titanic's distress signals, but they shrugged it off as some kind of friendly ship banter. And that's just one version of the story. Contrary to popular belief, the Titanic wasn't the SOS trailblazer. Wireless communication was still in its infancy, so there weren't any strict rules about keeping an ear out for distress calls. So, when the Titanic sent out its cries for help, the men on the Californian were basically in the dark. Some sources even claimed that the Californian's lone wireless operator had called it a night, leaving them clueless about the unfolding disaster just a stone's throw away. So, which version do you find more convincing? Let's know in the comments section. The lifeboat drill was cancelled, leaving passengers ill-prepared for the disaster to come. When the grandest, most luxurious ship in the world was setting sail, there was a crucial element missing: lifeboat training. The very drill that could have saved hundreds of lives was inexplicably cancelled at the last minute. But why? Apparently, Captain Edward J. Smith, the man at the helm of this floating palace, made the call to scrap the lifeboat drill, never to reschedule or carry out another one during the 4 days at sea. Now, you might be wondering why on earth such a vital training session was nixed. Well, it seems that the crew was so caught up in making the ship's interior as opulent as possible that they barely had time to prepare for the actual voyage. And as fate would have it, April 14, 1912, marked the last Sunday the Titanic would ever see, and the day of its tragic demise. But here's where it really hits an iceberg of disbelief. When the fateful moment arrived and disaster struck, there was a mind-boggling 60-minute delay before the first lifeboats were launched. Why the hold-up, you ask? Some thought the alarms were just a drill and opted to stay cozy indoors. Others were simply clueless about where to go. After all, there hadn't been any practice runs. As panic spread among the once carefree passengers, the crew struggled to launch the remaining lifeboats in time. In fact, they didn't even manage to deploy 2 of the collapsible ones. The result? A catastrophe of epic proportions that shook the world to its core. Accidents during construction shed light on the darker side of the Titanic's history. We all know the heartbreaking tale of the Titanic's tragic end, but did you know that its construction was shrouded in even more darkness and despair? Before it even set sail, with a whopping 2,223 passengers on board, or thereabouts, and a lifeboat capacity of 1,178, one would expect a higher survival rate than the mere 712 souls rescued. So, what went wrong? First, the boats launched at half capacity. Madness, right? Well, not when you consider that everyone, from passengers to crew, was firmly convinced that the Titanic was unsinkable. Filling the lifeboats was merely a precaution, or so they thought. The officers followed the women and children-only rule to a T, launching boats half full rather than allowing men to take the empty seats. But why did the Titanic sail with a measly 20 lifeboats when it needed at least double that number? Here's where it gets truly scandalous. There was space for 64 boats, but the chief designer planned for just 48. Even that would have been sufficient to save everyone, had they been loaded properly. But someone in the decision-making hierarchy decided that 48 boats would clutter the decks. The fear of clutter trumped the safety of passengers. The greedy owners, blinded by their lust for profits, harshed any opposition to this ludicrous decision. If only they had listened. Nearly 700 more lives could have been spared from the icy depths. Let this be a lesson for generations to come, never. Underestimate the importance of preparedness and safety, no matter how unsinkable something may seem. The Japanese survivor. When the Titanic sank, it was a well-known tradition for the captain to go down with the ship, but what about the passengers? Well, one particular survivor, Masabumi Hosono, found out the hard way that his survival would come with a hefty dose of shame and disgrace. Hosono, the sole Japanese person on board, managed to escape the sinking ship along with 706 other crew members and passengers. However, instead of being celebrated as a survivor, he was met with scorn and branded a coward upon his return home. It was a rough homecoming. But why was he treated this way? Rumor has it that Hosono, along with other male passengers, resorted to dressing as a woman to secure a spot on a lifeboat. Now, that might not have been the most chivalrous move, but desperate times call for desperate measures, right? Even the ship's owner, Mr. J. Bruce Ismay, saved himself in a lifeboat and faced a lifetime of disgrace for it. In Japanese culture, honor and duty hold significant weight, and poor Hosono was burdened with the shame of being labeled a coward for the rest of his days. The stigma even followed him beyond the grave, with his family fighting to clear his name long after his passing. So, what would you have done in Hosono's shoes? It's easy to speculate from the comfort of our armchairs, but when faced with such a dire situation, who knows how any of us would react? Unknown heroes. In the midst of the tragic tale of the Titanic, there lies a group of individuals whose bravery and dedication went unnoticed by many. We're talking about the engineers, the unsung heroes who kept the heart of the ship beating even as it met its tragic fate. You see, while others were scrambling for lifeboats and clutching onto their valuables, these brave souls were down in the inferno of the engine room, working tirelessly to keep the ship afloat. Joseph Bell and his team of engineers, electricians, boilermakers, and plumbers knew that without the power of the steam engines, the Titanic was as good as a sitting duck in a shooting gallery. As the ship began to break apart, did these engineers flee for their lives? Absolutely not. They stood firm at their posts, ensuring that the lights on the ship continued to shine until the very end. Their sacrifice allowed crucial distress signals to be sent out, giving others a fighting chance at survival. It's a shame that their names aren't as well known as some of the passengers and crew members. But let's not forget, it was these individuals who truly kept the Titanic afloat for as long as possible. Their unwavering dedication and selflessness in the face of danger should be celebrated and remembered. The slow devourer. The Titanic, the unsinkable ship that met its tragic fate over a century ago, is now under another attack. Bacteria. Bacteria are slowly but surely devouring the iconic wreckage at the bottom of the ocean. Now, we all know that bacteria can be a nuisance, causing all sorts of problems, but who would have thought they'd be capable of taking down such a massive piece of history? Scientists have even given this new bacteria a dramatic name, Halomonas titanicae. Just imagine, within a decade, the entire Titanic could vanish into thin air, or rather, into the depths of the ocean. The once grand and majestic ship could be reduced to nothing but a distant memory. The latest estimates paint a grim picture. By 2030, there may be no trace of the Titanic left at all. Handwritten account reveals shocking details. A handwritten account of the lifeboat recovery has unearthed some truly gruesome and chilling details that will send shivers down your spine. According to this hair-raising report, a passenger aboard the Oceanic documented the harrowing recovery of 3 corpses from a lifeboat. One of the bodies was found sporting a dinner jacket, while the 2 unfortunate Titanic firemen were tragically wedged underneath the lifeboat seats. But it gets even more macabre. One of the corpses had its arm come off in the hands of the Oceanic's boarding officer. And as if that wasn't enough to haunt one's dreams, a woman's ring was also discovered on the lifeboat, adding an extra layer of mystery to this already spine-tingling tale. Auctioneer Andrew Aldridge of Henry Aldridge and Son summed it up perfectly when he said, "The Titanic was dubbed the ship of dreams, but this is the ship of nightmares." It represents the most horrific aspects of a disaster. It turns out that these unfortunate souls were left behind when survivors from another lifeboat were rescued. To add an extra layer of tragedy to this already heart-wrenching story, it was revealed that one of the corpses in the dinner jacket was none other than Thompson Beatty, a first-class passenger on the Titanic. And if that wasn't enough to tug at your heartstrings, the wedding ring found on the lifeboat belonged to Gerda Lindell, a Swedish passenger who tragically drowned after briefly reaching the collapsible A lifeboat. Ellie's ring was held by her husband Edward before he met a similar fate on collapsible A, and his body was never recovered. It's a tale of love and loss that adds yet another layer of heartbreak to this already tragic narrative. A doll's head. The world was left in shock when a doll's head, the lone survivor of the Titanic, resurfaced 65 years after the tragic sinking. This remarkable relic belonged to Eva Hart, who had to part ways with her beloved doll as she escaped the doomed vessel. The doll's head was discovered by Captain Abel Federico Noguez of Argan Bell, 2,000 meters below the surface of the Atlantic, a haunting reminder of the Titanic's fateful journey from Southampton to New York City. After 41 years of resting on the ocean floor, the doll's head was finally brought back into the light by Teresa Martin, a passionate collector from Spain. Through a unique agreement with Eva Hart, Teresa became the caretaker of this precious artifact, providing closure to Eva, who had often spoken of her cherished doll in interviews about her harrowing experience on the ill-fated ship. The doll's head had a tumultuous journey of its own, as it was initially mistaken for a mere rock by a sailor who plucked it from the depths in 1977. Little did he know that he had stumbled upon a piece of history, which he safeguarded until his passing in 1992. Titanic movie profits could have built 11 replica ships. Can you imagine that the profits from a single movie could have funded the construction of 11 complete replicas of the Titanic? It's true. The iconic 1997 film by James Cameron raked in a staggering $2.2 billion worldwide, making it an absolute blockbuster. With that kind of cash, Cameron could have resurrected the Titanic not once, not twice, but a whole fleet of 11 ships. However, not everyone was singing praises for Cameron's masterpiece. Joe Rogan took a jab at the filmmaker, criticizing the movie for its inaccuracies. He didn't stop there, adding, "There was a thing they were talking about after that movie where people were leaving the film and they were depressed that their life was nothing." Rogan went on to express his surprise, saying, "I have never heard of another film generating depression." Well, it seems like even the most successful movies can't escape a bit of controversy. But that's not the only movie that set sail with the Titanic story. A Night to Remember hit the screens in 1958, but did you know there was an earlier film? Just 1 month after the disaster, a silent film titled Saved from the Titanic made its debut. What's even more astonishing is that the leading lady, Dorothy Gibson, was an actual survivor of the Titanic. She even wore the same outfit she had on that fateful night, a white evening gown, a long sweater, black shoes, and gloves. Unfortunately, the film met a tragic fate of its own when a fire destroyed all prints and copies in 1914. It seems like even the movies about the Titanic couldn't escape their own dramatic endings. Dogs on board. You won't believe what they found on the RMS Titanic. First-class passengers were living the high life, and that included bringing their furry friends along for the ride. There were 12 confirmed dogs on board, living it up in style. From a fox terrier to a French poodle, a French bulldog, and even John Jacob Astor's Airedale terrier, Kitty, these pups were living the dream. But while some lucky dogs managed to sneak onto the lifeboats and make it safely to New York, one pup's story took a dramatic turn. Legend has it that Anne Elizabeth Isham, a woman of great courage and love for her Great Dane, made a heart-wrenching decision. When crew members deemed her beloved dog too big for a lifeboat, Isham made the ultimate sacrifice. She chose to stay behind with her loyal companion rather than abandon him. The tale goes that authorities later discovered the body of a woman holding a large dog, believed to be none other than Anne Elizabeth Isham and her Great Dane. This incredible act of love and loyalty has become one of the most famous legends of the Titanic disaster. Can you imagine the devotion and bravery it must have taken for Isham to make such a choice? It's stories like these that remind us of the incredible bond between humans and their furry friends, even in the face of unimaginable tragedy. The last survivor. The Titanic's final survivor, Milvina Dean, had quite the dramatic entrance into the world. At just 9 weeks old, she was placed in a canvas mail sack and lowered into a lifeboat during the ship's tragic sinking. Her father, a pub owner from London, was on a mission to relocate the family to Kansas City, Missouri via third class aboard the ill-fated vessel. Sadly, he perished in the disaster, leaving Milvina, her mother, an older brother to survive. And to top it off, she was the youngest survivor rescued by the Carpathia. Betrayal of third-class passengers. Newly uncovered documents paint a chilling picture of the Titanic disaster aftermath. It turns out that rescue crews prioritized the bodies of first- and second-class passengers, callously tossing those from third class into the sea. The telegrams between a recovery ship and the White Star Line reveal this disturbing discrimination. While the elite received proper burials, many third-class families were left in the dark about their loved ones' fates. A betrayal of the highest order? A costly mistake. You won't believe what researchers have uncovered about the Titanic's tragic fate. It turns out, the whole disaster might have had a different ending if it weren't for a crucial mistake made on the fateful night. When the chief officer on the bridge received the iceberg warning, he made a colossal blunder by ordering the helmsman to turn the wheel harder starboard. Little did he know, this decision would seal the fate of the Titanic. Experts now believe that if they had done nothing, the ship might have had a fighting chance. The Titanic had collision bulkheads in its bow, meaning it could have potentially survived a head-on impact. In fact, researchers suggest that a head-on collision would have either prevented the ship from sinking altogether or at least slowed down the process, giving rescuers more time to save lives. In other words, if they hadn't made that fatal turn, things might have ended very differently. But hey, we all make mistakes, right? The more we uncover, the more we realize just how astonishing and tragic this historic event truly was. The world will never forget the stories of those who lived, those who perished, and the lessons learned from that fateful night. Thanks for watching. For a more thrilling story, click now on the next video that pops up on your screen.